This episode of Splain Yourself is brought to you by Sperry's. Sperry's is seafaring clothing, accessories, and shoes that are essential accompaniments for your adventurous lifestyle. It is also the official shoe of people who don't actually own a boat.
Welcome to Splain Yourself, the podcast that gives regular people a chance to explain their actions or beliefs. I'm Sarah, commander of the fun.
And I'm Michael. I'm here bringing you the Waka Waka. Today's topic is Unlearning Life Lessons, from an article written by Martha Beck and posted on the Huffington Post several years ago. Beck is a life coach with a PhD from Harvard University. She offers 10 fundamental life lessons to unlearn.
Yeah, and before we list those out, I'm always interested in the title of life coach. Like, how do you become a life coach? I want to know that.
Yes, this is number one. And what separates a life coach from a psychologist?
Right. What kind of degree do you get for a life coach?
And usually to be a coach of something, you have to be really good at it initially. So she's really good at living?
I guess so.
How do we prove this?
We could do some research.
Right.
So we've got these 10 lessons. Should we just kind of read these off?
Yeah, let's read them off and we'll go back and hit our favorites.
Okay.
Or least favorites.
That sounds good. So the first one is problems are bad. And then we've got it's important to stay happy. Number 3 is I'm irreparably damaged by my past. 4 is that working hard leads to success. The 5th lesson is success is the opposite of failure. Then we've got it matters what people think of me. And then we should think rationally about our decisions. And then we've got a few more here. The pretty girls get all the good stuff. Interesting. Second to last, if all my wishes came true right now, life would be perfect. And then finally, the last one, loss is terrible. So out of those 10, I guess, Michael, which of those struck a chord with you?
There were a number of them. And this is a really thought-provoking article, but I do not think I agree with many of her ideas or really her reasoning.
Right.
The first one that struck a chord with me was problems are bad. And her argument here, and I have the article in front of me,
nice,
is she gives a little paragraph, basically that problems always steer you towards something better, essentially. So she uses the example of job burnout, which is common, and she says it is steering you towards a more perfect career. Yes.
Could be.
It could be, right?
Yeah.
But this doesn't, this assumes that all problems have a beneficial end.
Right.
So, like, when I go to the doctor with a broken arm, my arm is not going to be improved by what the doctor does. The only thing it will do is set me back to normal.
Right.
So this is problem number one. And there are often, my complaint I wrote down here is that there are often problems which waste time and don't lead you anywhere in particular.
Right.
And let me give you a good example and you tell me what you think about this.
Sure.
I got my wife and I got a letter from the Homeowners Association.
Ugh.
The other day. HOA. And she said, well, we have a letter from the Homeowners Association. And the hair on my forearm started to stand up.
Yeah,
it's like
mine would too.
Fight time.
Yeah.
And they were informing us that our shutters didn't match the door.
Come on.
They were not painted the same color.
What?
And
that's a requirement to live in your neighborhood.
Yes. That's a requirement, and there are uniformity codes.
Oh my gosh.
So, solving this problem then essentially means either we paint the doors or the shutters.
Right.
And I can't figure out how this pushes me towards. It says at the end here, it says, finding a solution to each problem is what gives life its gusto. I don't see uniform shutters and doors as giving me any form of gusto.
No, unless gusto is a substitute for just rage against your HOA. Like, is that what gusto means?
Yeah, I guess. I wasn't aware of that definition.
No, exactly. Yeah, that's a great example. And actually, your example about breaking your arm, like I have broken arm stories. I broke my left arm 3 times, and none of those times did I feel like I got anything really great.
Where's your gusto?
Yeah,
you broke your arm wrong.
And in fact, not only did my arm not get set back to normal as being the level that we're trying to achieve here, but it's actually messed up more than it was before. So Yeah, I'm with you there. I agree. But I kind of see her point, and that's something that as educators, we try to help students understand, especially me as a math teacher. Like, we're all problems, right? And so, like, solving problems is great, but it depends on the kind of problem and the reason you're having to, deal with it in the first place.
Right. So then sometimes problems are bad.
Right, exactly.
And there's no bright side of this.
Yeah.
I think if we could channel her, we could bring her in here, she would say, well, this is an opportunity to redo the front of your house.
Right.
And
but I don't want to do the
A, I bought the house because I like the way the front looks.
Right.
And B, there are codes as to what I can and can't do with the front of the house. So it's not like I could add a splash of yellow.
Yeah.
By me, I mean...
I was going to ask if you could get away with doing something crazy like, let's do polka dots on the shutters and the doors, and now they match. No. Okay.
Luckily, there are architecture approval committees that I have to go before if I want to make any changes, and they have a specified set of rules.
These people have too much time on their hands. Like, the thought that strikes me is that someone paid enough attention to your house, like either walking by or driving by, and thought to themselves, I'm going to notify the HOA about this,
Yes. That's the other problem, is we have some looky-loos who live in the neighborhood.
Yeah. We got called on vacation one time by somebody that said they had a complaint that our trash can was visible from the road. Big no-no, right?
Oh.
Yeah.
So what did they do? Alert the FBI? I mean, you're having a serious problem with a visible trash can. This is a major concern.
I think we cut her off pretty short because we were on vacation, but yeah, we had to actually, when we got back, we had to figure out how to get it behind this bush so that it was.
Wait, this is a private, another person, or the HOA called you? Like your neighbor called, or the HOA called?
A neighbor who was a member of the board of the HOA called us. Yeah.
And you didn't tell them to kiss the seat of your trousers?
Well, that, Michael, would require me to not care what people think of me, which is actually one of our life lessons to unlearn.
Okay, so what do you think? Because you love the opinion of other people, and that is very...
I love it. I just want it to be good.
That is very important to you.
It is important to me, although I don't necessarily want it to be important to me. I feel like it's part of my maturation as a 37-year-old who's still maturing. It's something that I do have a goal to not deal with anymore. But I don't know if you ever get to a point where you truly just don't care of what people think of you. And you and I talked before we started recording about how maybe it does matter what some people think of you. Talk about that a little bit.
And shouldn't it matter what some people think of you? The thing I think you have to be selective about is whose opinion you value. I care very much what my wife thinks of me. Right? Because if I said, I don't care what you think, or I don't care, I'm headed to divorce real fast.
Exactly.
As I should be, by the way.
Exactly.
That is an unbelievably selfish position to take.
Sure.
Right? And
absolutely.
I also care what my boss thinks of me because I would like to remain employed.
Exactly.
And there are probably other examples we could name.
Right.
The things that the people that I don't care about are the people that I don't care about.
Right.
Right? And to make this determination is difficult, but I think the way that I think through this is my behavior having a real consistent effect on this other person's life, right?
Yeah.
I can't imagine that the people in the supermarket who don't like my shorts, for example, their life is truly affected by me, or I think my hair is terrible, which are both true. My shorts and my hair are terrible, but I can't see where their life is made better or worse by my choice of clothing or hairstyle.
Sure.
So this is one of my complaints. The other thing is this article talks about that you should have some sort of anguish, that people are often prone to anguish because of others' opinions. This to me is a you problem, I like to call it, right? And this is, I think, really part of the maturation process. Maybe when I was 18 or 22, everybody else's opinion was really important. But as you get older, in theory, you become more comfortable in your skin, right?
Yeah.
And this sounds to me like what you're trying to do.
Yes, absolutely. And I feel like I have gotten better. Like, supermarket, I don't care. I used to not go out of the house unless everything was as put together as I could make it, And I think with maybe even just within the last 5 or 10 years, I've gotten to the point where it's like, no, I don't care. I'm doing the no makeup thing. I'm doing the sweatpants, I don't care. My hair's messed up, I don't care. Because I agree with you. I feel like even if I got a look in the grocery store and it gave me a little bit of a pause, like, oh man, that person totally thinks I'm disgusting, I might think about it for like a minute and then, let it go. So I feel like there is some maturation there, because the amount of time I spend wondering, like, what's the thought of this other person, it's very short. It has gotten shorter. And you know how I drive, so like I've done things that have ticked people off in traffic, and I don't care about that at all, because I'm so far away from them in a matter of seconds that,
Right.
The physical distance is helpful.
Yeah.
I can pretend they're not actually people anymore,
That's right.
Like,
That's actually because they're getting smaller and you're leaving them in the dust.
Exactly.
Isn't this a conflict with you between that and the people pleasing, which you like so much?
Yeah, and I would say there are definitely times when my need to please people and what people think of me is consuming way too much of my thought power. And it probably comes out more with people that I'm acquainted with, but not necessarily like this is a family member or a good friend or my spouse, where it should matter what they think of me. So I've got to find that line. It may be like somebody I go to church with. In fact, this happened recently. I was supposed to help out with our church's children's church like 3 Sundays ago, and I didn't show up, but I was sending my husband in my stead. I wasn't feeling well that morning, so he went and he said, I'll fill in for you. Well, he went to the wrong place, and this lady ended up having to kind of fend off 14 4-year-olds by herself.
Whoa.
She said it was fine. Like, I apologized and my husband apologized, and she said it was fine, and it tore me up for like a couple of days. Like, I had to I got her a gift card and wrote her an apology note and gave it to her the next Sunday, and she looked at me like I was crazy, and she was like, it was really fine, you didn't have to do this. So I don't know, stuff like that, I guess. It's what I'm still dealing with.
Yeah, so what did you think the woman did not think it was fine? She was saying that to be polite?
Maybe, yeah. I mean, because I texted her originally, and when she texted back, it was fine. They were all really well behaved. That's when I thought to myself, well, she could just be telling me that to make me feel better and really still be frustrated with me. It wasn't until I actually looked her in the eye the next Sunday and saw her reaction to me being so very torn up about it that I was like, oh, it really was fine. Texting is the problem there, though, because you can't ever really infer tone unless you know somebody really, really well.
Yeah, so that's part of the problem. But
yeah.
The other part of the problem, I think, is that you are reading emotions into her that she does not display. In that case, it's incumbent upon her to say, in my opinion, it's not fine. If you tell me it's fine, then I'm going to be like, oh, okay, all right, I believe you, it actually is fine.
Right.
Unless I can somehow detect otherwise.
Right.
All right, if you are doing the thing where you say it's fine and it's really
not
fine, either you're being passive aggressive and we have to have an honest discussion.
Sure.
Right, or if you're not willing to do that, then that's really on the other person, in my opinion, because at the end of the day, we have to expect that adults are able to at least communicate honestly.
Right. And I agree with you completely. And and this person, I mean, I know her pretty well, and she's not passive aggressive. So I should have been able to just kind of let it go with the text. And I think we have a whole other podcast episode we could do about passive aggressiveness and what that means for communication with people you're very close to, especially in your marriage. But we should probably refocus because we've only talked about 2 things on this list.
Okay.
But yeah, I feel like, that one, it matters what people think of me. That one stood out to me the most as the thing that I still, that's the life lesson I have not unlearned yet. And I'm with you. I think it does matter what certain people think of you. But I think what the author meant here was that let's not be constantly consumed with how everyone perceives us.
And with that, I'm with the author on that one.
Yeah.
But again, I think this requires more nuance.
Yeah, for sure.
Which other one did you like?
Well, the second to last one caught my eye. If all my wishes came true right now, life would be perfect. And I feel like that's one that everyone, if you watch enough news, you follow celebrities enough, you get to the point in your life where you realize, the things that we think would make our life perfect, like more money or a better place to live or a better looking spouse or better looking self, like all the things that we think we want. It turns out, there's plenty of people who have those who seem like they're living really screwed up lives. So
right, yes. And celebrities to me are like an extra poor example of things because they present a huge facade to you, right?
Right, exactly.
There's a difference between what you see of them, right? It's very much a crafted image versus what it actually is.
Sure, which is why those like behind the scenes things are very helpful. When they end up in the magazines with like the really awful stories of drugs or abuse or whatever it is that they're dealing with, and you get that window into their lives, you realize, okay, well, obviously the money and the wealth and the prestige and fame were not things that made their lives any better.
Lottery winners go broke.
Yeah,
this is another.
That's a phenomenon that like is weird, but
that's another good example. But at the same time, even if you were like, if I could open up the magic genie vault and give you whatever you wanted, why would you not expect that a subset of new problems would follow from that, right?
Exactly. I feel like that's been explored so much in literature and art and film. I mean, I don't know. I feel like the older you get, the more of that kind of stuff you're exposed to, the more you realize, like, you know what? I'm okay with, like, I'm going to just be content with what I have.
Right. And here's where she has a good point. It says, weirdly, when you've stopped depending on tangible rewards, right? So you work really hard and then you get a Lamborghini. They often materialize. And I think this is true. To attract something you want, be as joyful as you think that thing would make you. The joy, not the thing, is the point.
Ah, yeah. I love that. It kind of has the idea of fake it till you make it, which I love. Like you can actually pretend to like someone long enough and then you'll end up liking them, if you just like almost fool yourself into doing that. So I think probably absolutely the same is true of joy. Like if I just say this house that I'm in makes me happy for these reasons, and you maybe have a mantra or something.
Or even beyond that, I would suggest working on then taking the energy and making the house to what genuinely makes you joyful.
Exactly.
Right?
Yeah.
So if your house is, I don't know, has shutters and a door that don't match, for example, and that bothers you,
then you're a crazy person.
Then your energy is better spent rather than working on buying a new house, and is better spent taking the house that you have and fixing it to the way that you would like, I think.
Yes.
In addition, I'm always suspicious of somebody who finds joy in material rewards or material things.
Give me an example.
If your whole life is based around what the great economist Thorstein Veblen, this is where we go into the 1900s economics.
Wow.
We'll just I'll give you a second to turn off the podcast here.
I'm interested.
He called it conspicuous consumption, the idea that you buy things in order to impress the other people, or the phrase he used, like, to keep up with the Joneses.
Right.
If this is what you do, you are a conspicuous consumer, then I think that you have a host of problems, honestly.
I would agree with you.
And your priorities are really, really wrong, right? Because once you have bought the car that equals your neighbor's, what's your next thing?
Right, exactly.
Right.
And they could always up the ante,
Right.
Yeah.
To me, this sounds terribly shallow and unappreciative for what you have, right? So, I drive a Honda.
Yeah.
Right, but a lot of people can't even afford a Honda, for example.
Right.
I'm completely good with it. If I just,
everything's relative. Yeah.
Right, and I just sat around and said, like, well, this Honda isn't a Ferrari. How would I ever get anywhere in life with sort of being joyful, right?
And if you really get joy out of a Ferrari and that's one of your life goals, but it has nothing to do with, like comparing yourself to other people, I say go get a Ferrari, if that's your thing. But yeah.
Right, but it can't be your only thing.
Right,
The Ferrari can't substitute for a lack of emotional maturity or depth or relationships.
You can't be trying to fill a void with a Ferrari. That there's not a hole that will fit that.
right.
Void.
The hole you could drive your Ferrari.
Yeah, exactly. That hole doesn't exist. So yeah, that one caught my eye. What else you got?
And this one is more for you than for me. Pretty girls get all the good stuff.
Yeah, that one was interesting to me, and I guess since it's a female author, she had her own personal experience with this.
And she says, let me read to you what she says. So she is a life coach. Oh God, so not true.
Yeah.
I unlearned this after years of coaching beautiful clients. Yes, these lovelies get preferential treatment in most of life's scenarios, but there's a catch. While everyone's looking at them, virtually no one sees them. Almost every gorgeous client had a husband who married her breast and jawline without ever noticing her soul.
Yeah, when I read that, it reminded me of something I heard, I think on another podcast, but they were talking about beautiful women and how, or beautiful anyone, like this could apply to men as well, but if you're super good looking and charismatic, it could be that you go through life without a really good sense of what people are responding to when it comes to their interactions with you. And at this podcast, they were talking about it kind of like radar. You've got no good feedback. So you might think you're extremely funny, and you may not be, but everyone around you, when you say something that's, supposed to, you mean it to be funny, it may not be that funny, but people are going to respond to it as if it were because of, what you look like, and they're trying to impress you, so you almost have this false sense of self because you're getting this false feedback from people around you. So I wonder if that's kind of what she's getting at here.
I really do. I think that's part of it.
Yeah.
But my other thing with people who are really, really good looking is you often don't have to build up any other part of anything, right? So you can coast. You can get through a lot of life with being good looking, understanding that you're good looking, and using it to your advantage. And if you are one of these people, I don't begrudge you anything.
No.
Right?
Use what you got,
you do, but I would also advise those folks to come up with a backup plan.
Yeah,
right?
Exactly. You will lose your looks.
You will lose your looks, or you will then attract shallow people, right? When you're behaving in kind of a shallow way. Attract shallow people. So what I think really, really like elite attractive people do is they rely on that and they never build up other skills.
Right.
Throughout life, I've realized that I'm not really, really good looking. And
your wife would argue, I think, if she were here.
She knows I'm not really good looking. She's well aware. And therefore, I've had to teach myself to do other things.
Sure,
right? It's sort of like, when I was like 12, I realized I wasn't good looking or particularly athletic. So it's sort of like, all right, what do you got now?
Something else. Gotta have something else.
So at 30, I figured I should double down on the books.
Yeah, there you go.
Maybe that would get me somewhere. But if you do not have at least one thing that you can sort of put out there, I worry that things are going to be really rough going later in life. And if you are, for most people, I would advise multiple things, right? Not all of them have to be really grandiose, right? But I think that you should have at least little notches. So you could be really smart and really nice.
Yeah.
Right? Or you could be, I don't know, musically talented and neat.
Yeah, there you go.
You could be a tidy person.
Sure.
And this is, you're making positive deposits for other people, whereas if you just rely on being good looking, all you got is being good looking. Right.
Which is not permanent in anybody's case.
Which is not permanent and often doesn't bring you, it just brings you kind of soulless and shallow people in return.
Exactly.
So yes. I wish this kind of message went out to more women, because I think that we live in a world where women are often put a lot of pressure on themselves to be at this level of attractiveness, which is, for most folks, it's unattainable genetically, right? You got to have really good-looking parents.
Right.
And B is a product of a good deal of effort, right? So, like, I could be much better looking if I spent 8 hours a day lifting weights, and I spent thousands of dollars a month on dieting, and I got my hair did and all the other things, right?
Yeah.
And then, on top of all that, when I got my picture taken, somebody airbrushed in some abs.
Exactly.
Right?
That's the other thing.
So you're trying to live up to this false, completely sort of made up ideal.
Yeah.
And it is so pervasive that it actually puts pressure on, especially women, and it's really heartbreaking that they have to be this way.
It absolutely is, and it's hard to avoid. Even if you actively avoid things like magazines or shows that perpetuate those ideas, it's still kind of buried somewhere within your subconscious. So you might, most of the day feel like, I'm comfortable with who I am, but then there's always going to be this voice, in the back of your mind just kind of saying, you're not good enough, you're not small enough, you're not tan enough. I mean, it could be anything. Your hair is too frizzy, because all these pictures, nobody's hair is frizzy in these pictures. But yeah, I think you're right. I feel like for younger girls especially, as they're developing their ideas of their own identity,
And this is horrendous to me.
Yeah.
Honestly, it's such a great deal of unobtainable pressure. It's just.
Well, and the good news is, if there is a bright spot at all, it's that I feel like we have in the past several years at least started to try to break down some of those barriers. You'll see ad campaigns that are specifically targeted at you're fine the way you are, and you'll see women who wouldn't be your typical cover of the magazine type women, but they're showcasing these women and saying, we've all got our things that make us beautiful in various ways.
And on my show Project Runway, they used to only have the real tall, thin women as the models, but they moved to plus size, or sometimes, as they call them, Rubenesque women.
Rubenesque. That's a great word. Which is an
interesting word. To be the models this season, which is a change that has pleased me greatly.
That's good. I like stuff like that. There's still so much to conquer, I think, because it's still out there. Even with just people's personal Instagram accounts, there's so much you can do with just the click of a button to make yourself look amazing, and that's what our younger girls are spending a lot of time doing, is thumbing through their social media feeds. And so if they're seeing those false presentations of their friends, even that's even more, I think, ingrained in them, is when they see people that they know personally that they don't feel like they're at that level. That can be all consuming. That's
No, I agree. And the first thing I would always advise to somebody who is struggling with anything is to get off of social media.
I would agree with that. I don't know how much luck we're going to have telling teens to get off of social media, but I agree with you.
Very little.
Yeah.
But what people end up doing is comparing to these false images. Right? And they never do you any good. You always think wow, look, Bobby got a new car. How come I don't have a new car?
Right, exactly.
Well, could Bobby afford the new car?
Yeah.
What circumstances led Bobby to get this new car?
Exactly. And it could all be staged, Bobby could be having marital issues, but we are jealous because he has a new car, I mean, there's such... It's just the tip of the iceberg, and we don't see what's under the surface, unless we actually know Bob.
And then we don't even really get that far under the iceberg for a lot of people, right?
Right, exactly.
We live in a world where people often, if you're having marital problems, for the example there, that's not something you're going to share.
Right.
And so while, everybody gets to arguments with their spouse, it's pretty much inevitable.
Sure.
We still live in a world where this is very much seen as shameful, when in actuality it shouldn't be shameful.
No, it should be normal, and we should be able to talk about it.
Right. It is absolutely insane to me to think that two people would spend so much time together in that type of relationship, or in any type of relationship, spend a great deal of time together, that they would not have some kind of conflict.
Sure.
To me, it's unavoidable.
Absolutely.
It's human
nature.
I feel the same way about work.
Yeah.
Which I actually view as very much the practical example of the real world.
Yeah.
That show on MTV, which was the first really popular reality show, besides Cops. The best
Cops,
the
real
best
world.
one,
Yes.
the real world.
Yeah.
Isn't work essentially a number of strangers confined in a small place for 8 hours, so 40 hours a week, and then trying to solve some tasks.
Right.
Which is what the real world was
Sure.
right for a long time, which
Sure.
is we'll take these random people. Well, work is filled with random people. I didn't know any of them before I came.
Exactly. We're
Then-
from all kinds of backgrounds.
Why would you not have conflict at work?
Right.
And the question becomes then, how do you deal
How do you deal with it?
Deal with it. Right?
Absolutely. Absolutely. Wow. Deep stuff.
It's heavy, man.
I love it. What else? I feel like we've only done 3 or 4 of these. Let's see. We talked about problems are bad.
Right.
We did pretty girls get all the good stuff.
They do.
So not true though.
Right.
Let's see. Matters what people think of me. All my wishes came true. Okay, we did 4. Let's see. What about success is the opposite of failure? That's a life lesson that I don't ever remember learning, but I guess all of these are kind of just along the way, they creep in.
Right. And, we put a great deal of importance on success.
Yeah, we do. And we define it in different ways, but I think for most people they'd say success is like, well, you're able to live how you want, You're able to live comfortably, you have the things that you need and maybe even a lot of things that you want. Your job is awesome. You have a good relationships with everybody, but for a lot of people it could also be just what's that dollar amount on my paycheck,
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
Yes. And her argument, which I completely agree with, is that success is built on failure.
Aha.
And this makes perfect sense to me. Whether you are shooting hoops, right?
Yeah.
Like you have to keep missing shots before you can eventually figure out how to make them, or you're sort of going through things in life, you are going to fail many, many more times than you succeed. The idea that these are opposites is strange, right? Because they're actually they are the yin and the yang. They are sort of inevitably linked together.
Sure.
And that we should maybe, think about failure differently. That's not really failure, it's just a learning experience. And that we should I like to think of it as turning into failure, right? And that failure is something that we face and we acknowledge rather than we have to hide.
Sure.
I went to jiu-jitsu practice, it was a couple weekends ago, and I came home and I was pretty pleased with myself. And I was telling my wife what happened, and she said, well, it sounds like you lost a bunch. I did. But I've come to the point when dealing with this, trying to learn Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu, because it's so complicated and difficult, a good session for me is when I can understand why I lost.
Aha.
And then I can not do it going forward,
Sure.
or at least get some practice,
Yeah.
rather than being upset when I lose.
Right. I think that's the key. And I think because of the school we work at, we've got students in these groups doing these projects, and we talk about failure with them. I remember talking a lot about that year 1. In year 2, they heard a lot from speakers about failure and how great of a thing it is. But I think some of them have kind of misinterpreted that to mean that we can sit on our butts this whole time and not do any work. And if we don't have a product to show, we failed. But we were told that that's okay, so we can kind of pat ourselves on the back. And I'm not sure if they would admit that. I'm not sure if that's a conscious process of thought for them or if it's something that they've kind of just assumed subconsciously. But I hope that we're able to kind of frame it in a different way, and maybe we need to do different terminology.
Yeah, and I think the idea of failure for what we're doing at school is really outdated.
Yeah.
Failure is lack of effort,
Yeah.
right? And we will always get some of that in
Sure.
that you got some teenage angst.
Yes.
I'm not doing that, man.
Right. Yeah,
Don't
exactly.
tell me what to do, man. So we have some of that.
Yeah.
And that is a failure because you haven't even done anything.
Right.
What I would like to see we would really like to see us start to change the way we conceptualize failure, and especially what we call it. I think that we should just call them learning experiences.
Yeah.
And then the idea is to debrief students or people in general on what did you learn from this and how do we spin it into a positive going
And that's
forward.
the thing. Yeah, going forward, I think is the thing. You can't go into your next learning experience and keep repeating the same mistakes that you made before, especially if the mistake is kind of grounded in inaction.
Yeah, that's failure to me.
Yeah.
And to me, you can keep going in if you are making effort and continually the same mistake. To me, that just says you're taking a little longer to learn, and that's also okay.
Sure.
Sometimes you have to make the same mistake 4, 5, 6, 7, 12 times
Sure.
before you get it. Okay, that's slower learning.
Yeah.
But it's learning. I think is still okay. It's
Right.
when you're not doing anything.
Yeah, and that happens a lot. And for me, it's sometimes hard to kind of view further down the road and realize that like there are students that we have here that will not pick up on this idea of using failure as a learning opportunity to launch into something else. Like they may not pick up on that idea until they're clear out of here, you know? So it may take a college experience or a first job experience for them to kind of get it into their heads that
Sure.
this is how learning works, this is how life works.
Sure.
Yeah.
But then I look at it, we're just like tilling the soil.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah, absolutely. Cultivating.
We're cultivating.
Yeah.
We may not see ROI, we may not see fruit immediately, but at
Right.
some point, and that is, sometimes that's just life.
Sure.
It takes people longer to learn things and to understand things. And while you would like people to pick up things immediately, and you can even often try and tell them, like, hey, stop doing that.
Right.
It's not really going to work. And
Right.
part of me is grateful for the fact, like, that doesn't always work is because that forces them to learn.
Mm-hmm.
You would be not living much of an experience if you could find like a life Sherpa
Yeah.
who could
Life coach, like this often.
yeah, I could
What?
have this lady
just follow us around.
Right, follow us around, tell us what to do and what not to do. Then
Right.
you might as well be a robot at that
Exactly.
point, right?
You have to learn those things for yourself. I agree with you. And I feel like it's good that we brought this one up because to me, this one ties in with it matters what people think of me. In my mind, you know, I think about my struggles with you know, curiosity about what people think of me, leading to anxiety. That to me kind of stems from growing up and being scared to fail, you know? So scared to screw up in front of other people. And when you do fail or mess up and people kind of notice it, and now you're launched into, well, now I'm concerned about what these folks think of me because I failed in front of this person and I wanted to succeed. I want everyone to think that I'm automatically amazing at everything all the time, you know? And I think you've got, like, population is probably split as far as like people who kind of grow up that way and people who for some reason just learn that, like, you know, it's okay, I'm just gonna, you know, like, it's that growth versus fixed mindset thing. Mm-hmm. And I don't think my parents had like an intentional path as far as that was concerned. I think it just kind of naturally evolved the way it did. But
or the other, while I'm thinking about what you're saying, do you think that maybe we all kind of collectively overinflate our importance?
yeah, oh, absolutely.
So
We're all egomaniacs.
yeah, so why would anybody care about you in the grocery store?
Right.
Is this the idea that you think you're so scary important
Yeah.
that the other people should absolutely take an interest in you, when in reality, when I go to the grocery store, the last thing I'm interested in is the other people there?
Right.
I would just like to get my
I want my stuff.
sugar-free snacks and get out of there.
That's right. Yeah, you're actually kind of hitting on an idea that I've been preaching for a while, which is the idea that insecurity isn't actually low self-esteem. It's actually kind of, it's on the other end. You know, your self-esteem is too high, which makes you insecure because you feel like you're the center of everyone's attention, so you have to be perfect all the time because everybody's paying attention to you. And I feel like that if you grab onto that notion, it totally changes the way you approach helping people deal with their insecurities. Because if your approach is, well, you must have low self-esteem, so let's try to sit here and make you feel really good about yourself. Like, what are all the things that are awesome about you? It's almost like that's making it worse because I already thought I was awesome and I was just worried that other people weren't seeing me as awesome, you know? So that's interesting.
Right.
But let's see. What else we got?
Pretty Girls Get Lost is terrible. Da, 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 da. It's important to stay happy. Happy, she says, solving a knotty problem can help us be happy, but we don't have to be happy to feel good. It sounds crazy. Try this. Focus on something that makes you miserable, then think, I must stay happy. Stressful, isn't it? Now, say it's okay to be as sad as I need to be. This kind of permission to feel as we feel, not continuously happy, is the foundation of well-being. Yes, to me and my therapist, happiness is a fleeting emotion.
Yeah.
And it is kind of maybe it's the opposite of sadness, but it is not something you can permanently be.
Right.
Because it is a brief moment, right? You can be happy on a roller coaster.
Yeah.
But at some point the roller coaster
it will stop.
ends.
Yeah. And I feel like it's like sadness in that way. You know, you wouldn't be able to live if you were constantly sad. In fact, people struggle with that and, you know, have to do a lot of things to try to combat that. Same with happy. It's not sustainable. And to me, I've always kind of grown up with this notion that happiness is much different from kind of a general sense of like peace and contentment.
Yeah,
you know?
That's what I think a lot of people should be shooting for,
Right.
is contentment.
Right.
And,
I mean, and you can nitpick about what these words mean, but yeah.
I think that is that's like what you should be aiming at, with the understanding is that you will not always be content.
Right.
Either.
Right.
Contentment is almost fleeting as well. You can be content for a longer period, but always something will happen, and this is sort of the brutal reality of being an adult.
There will be flux.
Your contentment.
Right, exactly. But I'm wondering if your state of contentment is maybe like that's home base, you know? So we always kind of want to get back there and not shoot for let's get back to happiness, you know, because that might be setting the bar a little too high. I don't know. But yeah, that's something I learned even just like recently within the last 5 years. I would say nothing really awful or sad happened to me for the first 33 years of my life, you know, and then we had a couple of years where it was just one hit after the other. Like Jerry's mom died and we had a family event. My dad had a heart attack and we thought he might have died, and so those things, you know, if you don't experience anything like that up to a certain point, then your notions of happiness before then may be a little bit warped, and you may have, and for me it was kind of like, well, why wouldn't you be happy? You know, like there's all this cool stuff in the world, and you just have this positive outlook because you've never had to really go through anything super tough where your emotions are, you know, kind of in flux for several days or weeks or months in a row, you know?
Yeah.
So I feel like once you get to that point where you've got those things happening, and that could vary, you know, your threshold for that is obviously different depending on who you are, but yeah, so obviously I have more empathy now for people who are in a state where, okay, I haven't really felt happy in this number of days.
Yeah.
You know, before I kind of would have been like, well, why don't we just like go do something awesome and then you'll be happy, you know, and it's just not that simple.
Right. Or my thing is, because I deal with depression, is people say like, well, why don't you just look at this thing differently?
Right. You're like, wow, wouldn't that be nice?
Right. Like if I could do that, if I could just flip on the magic switch,
yeah.
I would.
Exactly.
Right?
Exactly.
But the life is not so easy this way, I think.
Right.
And then the key to contentment becomes how you deal with these things, right?
Yes.
I can predict with 100% certainty that everybody's parents are going to die, right?
Yeah.
Because nobody's ever figured out how to live forever.
Right.
So it's going to happen. The question is, how do you deal with that?
Yeah, exactly.
What lessons can you take away from them? What piece can you make of it? And sort of what are the positives that can result? And like the article says, I think we can acknowledge the fact that it's going to be rough.
Yeah, and you don't have to silver line it. You know, that's one thing that we've learned going through tough things, and it's good that we have people around us who don't believe that you have to silver line things. So it's not like we experienced Jerry's mom's passing and then all of a sudden everybody's like, well, you know, here's the good that has come out of this. They were willing to just sit with us and kind of be sad with us,
right.
You know, which is good. But there's a period for that, and then you have to kind of figure out, all right, we got to do life again, you know, and how do we do that without just falling apart day after day? Yeah.
Anything else that you're particularly intrigued by on this list?
It's all intriguing to me. I think we could talk about this stuff forever. But I think overall, it's good to put stuff like this out there and frame it in a way that kind of makes people rethink things we thought were solid gold truth, and we may need to flip those things on their heads a little bit.
Yeah, I enjoy things that are provocative without being unnecessarily strident or triggering, which I think she does a good job of dealing with.
I would agree with that. Nothing was triggering.
No.
Yeah. Well, cool. Good discussion.
Absolutely. This is another fantastic episode. Well, I think we're good here.
Yeah, we are.
As always, I remind you to be easy and be ready to splain yourself.
Bye, everybody.
Bye, everybody.